Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tanamane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane. Nirvishesha Srinivadi Astetyade Satane. So welcome everyone. Today we're going to read from the Nectar of Instruction, text number 8. Nama Tanama Rupacharitadi Sakirtananu Smrityo Kramena Rasana Manasini Oja Tishtan Raje Tananagar Anuragi Jananugami Kalam Nayat Akilam Itividesha Saram. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The essence of all advice is that one should utilize one's full time, 24 hours a day, nicely chanting and remembering the Lord's divine name, transcendental form, qualities, and eternal pastimes, thereby gradually engaging one's tongue and mind. This way one should reside in Braj, Goloka Vrindavan Dham, and serve Krishna under the guidance of devotees. One should follow in the footsteps of the Lord's beloved devotees who are deeply attached to his devotional service. To Prabhupada's purport. Since the mind may be one's enemy or one's friend, one has to train the mind to become his friend. The Krishna consciousness movement is especially meant for training the mind to be always engaged in Krishna's business. The mind contains hundreds and thousands of impressions, not only of this life, but also of many, many past lives of the past. These impressions sometimes come in contact with one another and produce contradictory pictures. In this way, the mind's function can become dangerous for a conditioned soul. Students of psychology are aware of the mind's various psychological changes. In the Bhagavad Gita 8.6, it is said, Yam yam vapi smaran bhavan tyajantyanta kalevaram tam tam evaiti kontiya sadat had bhava bhavitaha. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail. At the time of death, the mind and intelligence of a living entity create the subtle form of a certain type of body for the next life. If the mind suddenly thinks of something not very congenial, one has to take a corresponding birth in the next life. On the other hand, if one can think of Krishna at the time of death, he can be transferred to the spiritual world, Goloka Vrindavan. This process of transmigration is very subtle. Therefore, Srila Rupa Goswami advises devotees to train their minds in order that they will be unable to remember anything other than Krishna. Similarly, the tongue should be trained to speak only of Krishna and taste only Krishna Prasad. Srila Rupa Goswami further states, Tishtan Raje, one should live in Vrindavan or any part of Brajabhumi. Brajabhumi, or the land of Vrindavan, is supposed to be 84 kroshas in area. 1 krosha equals 2 square miles. When one makes Vrindavan his residence, he should take shelter of an advanced devotee there. In this way, one should always think of Krishna and his pastimes. This is further elucidated by Srila Rupa Goswami in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Krishna smaranam janam chasya preshtam nija samihitam tat kata ritascha so koryadvasam vraje sada. A devotee should always reside in the transcendental realm of Braj and always engage in Krishna smaranam, janam chasya preshtam, the remembrance of Sri Krishna and his beloved associates. By following the footsteps of such associates, and by entering under their eternal guidance, one can acquire an intense desire to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Again, Srila Rupa Goswami states in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Sevaka Sadhaka Rupena, Siddha Rupena Chatrahi, Tadbhava Lipsana Karya, Raja Loka Nusarataha. In the transcendental realm of Brajadam, one should serve the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna with a feeling similar to that of his associates, and one should place himself under the direct guidance of a particular associate of Krishna, should follow in his footsteps. This method is applicable both in the state of sadhana, spiritual practices executed while in the state of bondage, and in the state of sadhya, God realization, when one is a siddha purusha or a spiritually perfect soul. Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has commented as follows upon this verse. One who has not yet developed interest in Krishna consciousness should give up all material motives and train his mind by following progressive regular principles, namely chanting and remembering Krishna and his name, form, quality, pastimes, and so on. In this way, after developing a taste for such things, one should try to live in Vrindavan and pass his time constantly remembering Krishna's name, fame, pastimes, and qualities under the direction and protection of an expert devotee. This is the sum and substance of all instruction regarding the cultivation of devotional service. In the neophyte stage, one should always engage in hearing Krishna Katha. This is called Shravana Dasa, the state of hearing. By constantly hearing the transcendental holy name of Krishna, by hearing of his transcendental form, quality, and pastimes, one can attain to the state of acceptance called Varna Disha. When one attains this stage, he becomes attached to the hearing of Krishna Katha. When one is able to chant in ecstasy, he attains the stage of Smarna Vastaha, the state of remembering. Recollection, absorption, meditation, constant remembrance, and trance are the 5 stages of progressive Krishna Smarana. At first, remembrance of Krishna may be interrupted at intervals, but later remembrance proceeds uninterrupted. When remembrance is uninterrupted, it becomes concentrated and is called meditation. When meditation expands and becomes constant, it is called anusmriti. By uninterrupted and unceasing anusmriti, one enters the state of samadhi or spiritual trance. After smarna dasa, or samadhi, is fully developed, the soul comes to understand his original constitutional position. At that time, he can perfectly and clearly understand his eternal relationship with Krishna. That is called sampati dasa, perfection of life. Chaitanya Charitamrita advises that those who are neophytes to give up all kinds of motivated desires, simply engage in the regular devotional service of the Lord, according to the directions of the scripture. In this way, a neophyte can gradually develop attachment to Krishna's name, fame, form, qualities, and so forth. When one has developed such attachment, he can spontaneously serve the lotus feet of Krishna, even without principles. This stage is called Raga Bhakti, devotional service and spontaneous love. At that stage, the devotee can follow in the footsteps of one of the eternal associates of Krishna in Vrindavan. This is called Raganuga Bhakti. Raganuga Bhakti, or spontaneous devotional service, can be executed in the Shanta Rasa when one aspires to be like Krishna's cows, or the stick or flute in the hand of Krishna, or the flowers around Krishna's neck. In the Dasya Rasa, one follows in the footsteps of servants like Chitraka, Patraka, or Rataka. In the friendly Sakya Rasa, one can become a friend like Baladev, Sridham, or Sudam. In the Vatsalya Rasa, characterized by parental affection, one can become like Narada, Nanda Maharaj, and Jasoda. And in the Madhurya Rasa, characterized by conjugal love, one can become like Srimati Radharani or her lady friends such as Lalita and her serving maids, Manjaris like Rupa and Rati. This is the essence of all instruction in the matter of devotional service. So the text again. Tanama Rupacharitadi Sukirtananu Smrityo Kramena Rasanamanasini Oja Tishtan Vraje Tanuragi Jananugami Kalam Naya Akilam Itipadesha Saram. The essence of all advice is that one should utilize one's full time, 24 hours a day, nicely chanting and remembering the Lord's divine name, transcendental form, qualities, and eternal pastimes, thereby gradually engaging one's tongue and mind. In this way, one should reside in Braj, Goloka Vrindavan, and serve Krishna under the guidance of devotees. One should follow in the footsteps of the Lord's beloved devotees who are deeply attached to his devotional service. Om Agyanatmanandasya Garanjana Salakaya Chaksur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. This verse is following other verses in Nectar of Devotion, specifically the 7th verse in the Nectar of Devotion. Krishna had said that Sat Krishna Nama Charitadi Sutapta Vidya Pitopatapta Rasanas Narochikanu Kinvanarad Kinvadarad Anudinam Kaila Savajushta Swavi Kramad Bhavati Tad Kada Mulahantri. The holy name, character, pastimes, and activities of Krishna are all transcendently sweet like sugar candy. Although the tongue of one afflicted by the jaundice of avidya, ignorance, cannot taste anything sweet, it is wonderful that simply by carefully chanting these sweet names every day, a natural relish awakens within his tongue and his disease is gradually destroyed at the root. So before we can talk about the 8th verse, we have to talk about the 7th verse. Namely, that our most important business is to chant prescribed number of rounds and offenselessly. According to the Nectar of Devotion, that all the rules and regulations that are found in the Vedas, and therefore all the rules and regulations that are given by the spiritual master and the sadhus, is smartavyak sadatam vishnur, vismartak jatu nakinchit, sarva vidi nisedyasyur, etiura eva kinkara. That one should always remember Krishna and one should never forget him. This is the essence of all the rules, the things that we're supposed to do, the vidis, and the nishedas that we're not supposed to do in the Vedas. That is, the positive rule is that we should always remember Krishna, and the negative rule is that we should never forget him. Of course, we have an example of Kamsa. Kamsa also always remembered Krishna and couldn't forget him, to such a degree that when he saw his 2 wives, Prasuti, and I forget the other one's name, Suti, that he thought they were Krishna and Balaram. And therefore, he took out his sword and was going to kill his 2 wives, thinking that he was going to kill Krishna and Balaram. Now, that's really very deep meditation. If you think your wives are Krishna and Balaram, you're quite absorbed in Krishna consciousness. Unfortunately, that kind of absorption is not very favorable. Luckily, he didn't kill his wives, nor could he kill Krishna and Balaram. But that kind of absorption is also purifying, such that Kamsa, because Kamsa had the opportunity of having Krishna personally embrace his chest, but Kamsa obtained liberation. The idea is that remembrance of Krishna is also association with Krishna. Of course, that association should be positive. It should be favorable. If you're going to associate with someone eternally, it should be positive. To have to live with someone you don't like eternally is very unfavorable. But to live with someone you love eternally, that's extremely favorable. Therefore, Nam Namakari Bahudan Nija Sarva Shaktis, Krishna has come in many different ways to give us the opportunity to associate with him. Nama Chintamani Krishnas Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purno Shuddho Niti Mukto Vinatvam Tvam Nami Namino. That Krishna and his name are non-different. Krishna and his form are non-different. Krishna and his activities are non-different. Krishna's associates are non-different from him. They're qualitatively one with him. But simultaneously different. In other words, somehow or another, if we can put our mind upon Krishna, then gradually will become, that's called Krishna consciousness. The most direct way, of course, is to chant. And when we chant Hare Krishna, there's no need for adding anything else because Krishna is there already, the sound of his name. Now, of course, if we feel Krishna's presence, it's very likely we'll also remember what Krishna looks like. And as our mind becomes progressively purified, we'll be able to feel Krishna's presence. So that presence is spiritual. And it awakens us, the soul, to our natural nature also. Because our nature and Krishna's nature are non-different. Therefore, when we can feel Krishna's nature, his mood, when we can feel Krishna's exchanges, loving exchanges with his devotees, and feel their feelings for Krishna, then that also awakens our feelings for Krishna and for his devotees. Just like in the material world, we also have feelings. But those feelings are coming from the false ego, the emotions. They're arising out of the bodily experience or the subtle mental experience born out of the material energy. Therefore, generally speaking, material emotions are simply products of the false ego. But spiritual experience or spiritual experience of Krishna, this is arising out of devotion of the soul. So that's what we want to develop. So the idea is that, for instance, Srila Prabhupada has given us 16 rounds a day to qualify ourselves for at least first initiation. But of course, the idea is 24 hours a day. Kirtanayak Sada Hari. That may not be possible, but at least 16 rounds a day should be possible. And at the same time, to hear about what Krishna is like. And try to remember what we've heard during the day. Often, due to our inattentiveness, when we hear about Krishna, for instance, in a class, then our minds are in different places. Somehow or another, material energy has convinced us that actually the experience of Krishna consciousness is supposed to be beyond our reach. After all, we're conditioned souls, and it would be embarrassing to become a liberated one. What would we tell our friends if we became liberated? Would they criticize us? Or what would they think? That actually we're supposed to become liberated. And to do that, we have to believe there's such a thing as liberation. And to experience liberation, that Krishna has to reveal to us what liberation is like. So here it mentions that we should chant and hear about Krishna. But at the same time, to come to the platform of liberation, we have to act on the liberated platform. Now, obviously, when Srila Rupa Goswami mentions that we should live in Vrindavan, Braj, and serve Krishna under the guidance of the Lord's devotees, now I think Braj is pretty crowded already. So all the devotees of the movement move there. Apartments would be too expensive. So Srila Rupa Goswami doesn't mean that we have to all move to Braj physically. But we should live in Braj, like the gopis were living in Braj, by thinking about Braj. Now, of course, if you're in your office, it's pretty hard to think that the hill outside is Govardhan Hill. All my office workers are cowherd boys. That I'm a gopi. It would probably not be very appropriate. On the other hand, the pastime that is going on that we can take part in, which is non-different from the pastimes in Braj, is the Sankirtan movement. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Shri Krishna, Chaitanya, Radhe Krishna Nahi Anda. We enter into Braj consciously in our thoughts and our remembrance, not directly, but by serving the Sankirtan movement. As Prabhupada writes in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 9th chapter, verse number 2, Raja Vidya Raju Guyam Pavitram Itam Uttamam, about how to enter into how the glories of devotional service. Prabhupada writes that if one chants Hare Krishna, then gradually one becomes purified. And if one engages in the preaching work, then gradually one will feel transcendental pleasure. In other words, to actually become qualified to offenselessly chant means we have to act on the Madhyama Adhikari platform. Madhyama Adhikari platform means that we have to do some service to Krishna. And at the same time, we have to learn how to associate with the devotees. Associating with the devotees means we have to choose elevated devotees, those who are more elevated than we are, those who are more enthusiastic about devotional service, and those who have nicer relationships with the other devotees. Those who encourage us to develop relationships on 3 levels. As it says here, there are devotees who are just learning how to chant Hare Krishna. So we have to help them, give them our, let me start with those who we see as more elevated than we are. Now they became elevated by serving elevated devotees, more elevated than they are. And even the topmost devotees, say Srila Prabhupada, his mood was that his spiritual master was infinitely more elevated than he is. And therefore, he's constantly engaging in meditating on the instructions of his spiritual master, which are coming down from Krishna. So by serving the instructions of one's spiritual master coming down from Krishna, one is actually connected with Srimati Radharani. Because ultimately the instructions coming down from Krishna or from Srimati Radharani, they come down through the disciple succession, and by serving them, we're actually serving Srimati Radharani. And as soon as we stop serving them, that's called aparad. Rad means Srimati Radharani. Apa means against Srimati Radharani. Anything done, even if it's in goodness, or in passion, or in ignorance, anything done which is not directly serving Krishna through Srimati Radharani in disciple succession It's called an aparad. And such an aparad does not allow us to experience Krishna. Srimati Radharani and her associates will not allow persons who are not interested in serving Krishna to have association with Krishna. Or as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Bhakti-mam abhijananti yavan yaschasmi tatvataha tatomam tatpato gyatva vishite tat anantaram. That one can understand Krishna only through devotional service. And devotional service is under the jurisdiction of Srimati Radharani. So the instructions we find in Srila Rupa Goswami's literature, such as Nectar of Devotion, or Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, are all instructions to help us engage in Krishna's service under the direction of Srimati Radharani and her representatives. And by doing so, then Krishna is under the control of Srimati Radharani, then he appears within our consciousness. Therefore, our first business is to understand what it means to serve Srimati Radharani. And in this age, serving Srimati Radharani means serving Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Srimati Radharani is saving the universe in this age through Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And those who are receptive, they can experience the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But simply we have to give up the idea that we're not servants of Krishna, we are Krishna. So therefore in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, we have to hear the philosophy, Tat Shinu. And what is that philosophy? Bhoktaram yaga tapasam, sarva lokam maheshwaram, suridam sarvabhutanam, gyatmamam shantim richati. We first of all have to accept that Krishna is the proprietor. Because as soon as we forget Krishna is the proprietor and believe ourselves to be independent proprietors of anything, then Maya comes and puts us into illusion. Maya is also Srimati Radharani's representative, because Durga Devi is an expansion of Srimati Radharani. And therefore her business is to Krishna Bhagirmukha Bhoga Vanchatare, Ikatasta Tare Chapatiyadare. That is, as soon as Durga, who's Srimati Radharani's representative in this world as the police force, sees that instead of wanting to become Krishna's servant, well, we turn our face away from Krishna and want to become the master of this world, even to a small extent, then Maya comes and covers us with a false ego, and therefore we believe with this body, and as a body, we have so many things that we own and possess in this world. Now, even if one thinks he's a spiritual soul, even if one gets out of the such covering of ignorance, that one is able to accept that everything here is Krishna's energy. But then since we have to use Krishna's energy, we may believe that we should be happy in whatever we're doing. We should gratify ourselves. Yes, I believe everything is Krishna's energy, and I'm willing to follow Krishna's directions under the representatives of Krishna. But then I believe I should enjoy something, even some prestige, for being such a good servant. Something should come back to me. Someone should pat me on my back for being such a wonderful person and servant. And if no one else does it, then pat myself on the back. So this gross and subtle enjoyment is another type of Maya. Even prasadam can be Maya. instead of eating prasadam with the idea that this is service to Krishna, we may think it's my reward for all my service. And therefore my prayer is, you're up there and I'm down here, let's eat. So this is called passion. In the mode of passion, we still maintain the idea that I can enjoy the material energy somehow. But that's all right. At least it's better than ignorance, where we have no idea that there's a controller and it's not us. But still one has to go further to come to the platform of bhakti. That is, not only am I not the controller, and I'll enjoy because our nature is to enjoy, but I should enjoy in Krishna's service. The highest enjoyment is to be conscious of Krishna and his loving exchanges with his devotees. The bliss of Srimati Radharani is unlimited. She is Ladini Shakti. She is pleasure itself. And that pleasure rises out of her pure devotion to Krishna. And that the pleasure that she has, the love that she has, is directed for Krishna's enjoyment. And Krishna's unlimited potencies are also directed towards pleasing his devotees. So the atmosphere of meditating on Radha and Krishna, their pleasure, gives one unlimited pleasure, even more pleasure in Srimati Radharani and Krishna experience. On the other hand, when we meditate upon our senses, then that we only get the very limited pleasure of sense gratification. So one should not think oneself to be the controller. One should think oneself to be the servant. That's why we take initiation, to give up the false ego that this body is me. The things in relation to the body are also mine, I and mine. Instead, that I'm the dasa, dasa, anudasa, or dasi, dasi, anudasi. I'm the servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna. And when we come to the platform of identifying ourselves as a spiritual being, servant of the servant of Krishna, then we could try to do things under the direction, as it says here, of Krishna's representatives. Then we have to become inquisitive. What do they want me to do? How do they want me to serve Krishna? So that's called Jnana Yoga. That is knowledge. That not only am I a servant of Krishna, but then I should do some service. And I should learn how to do it so to find out what my service is, that means I've given up the idea that I'm the enjoyer. First, we have to give up the idea that I'm the controller and the proprietor. Then we have to give up the idea that I'm an independent enjoyer. Just like the stomach is not the hands are not an independent enjoyer. They have to bring the food to the stomach, and then when the stomach's satisfied, then all the different parts of the body are satisfied. The leaves and the branches are not independent enjoyers. No one has to bring the water to the root, and then all the leaves and branches become satisfied. So if we want to be happy, we have to add Krishna to our experience, to our lives. And do things with care and attention, with the idea that this will please Krishna and his representatives. That we should think whatever I'm doing, that Krishna is there, Krishna's representatives are there, and therefore I'm doing it to please them. And then we'll give up then we'll become happy because we'll experience their happiness. But if they're not there in our consciousness, then how can we experience their happiness? Because we don't even know that, we're not even accepting that they could be there. care and attention just to please Krishna through his representatives. Then we can give up the idea that I'm actually the savior. The mode of goodness, when we come to the mode of goodness and we hear ourselves talking, we may imagine that these are my words, these are my realizations. I'm saving so many different people. By my instructions, people can go back to Krishna. But they're actually not our instructions, because we're not independent. Unless Krishna gives us remembrance, we can't remember anything. Unless Krishna helps us forget all the crazy ideas we have or had, then we can't forget them. And unless Krishna gives us knowledge, we don't know what's going on. So we're not independent at any moment, especially not in the material world. So we have to understand that we're not the saviors. We're being saved by our acharyas and disciples of succession, and by Krishna, Paramatma within our heart, who senses our desire to serve the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and therefore is reminding us what is actually going on here. What is Krishna consciousness? How to see things in Krishna consciousness. And we know we're seeing things in Krishna consciousness if we're seeing things through the eyes of scripture, at least. We can't say that I have an independent vision in Krishna consciousness unless we don't. Our vision of reality has to be judged by whether or not it's confirmed by Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. Of course, that means we have to read Prabhupada's books. It means we have to actually have some idea whether I'm seeing things properly, whether these things are confirmed, what I'm seeing, how I'm seeing things, what I'm doing, whether it's all being confirmed by Guru, by Sadhu, and Shastra. Now, Guru is present, as Sadhu is present, by words, and their words are non-different from Shastra. Therefore, we should carry around within our heart the words of Guru, the words of Sadhu, and the words of Shastra, and then see whether or not I'm serving those instructions or not. Because if we don't have them in our heart, then we'll have to do something else other than service to Krishna. And as long as Krishna, when Krishna sees that we're carrying within our heart the instructions of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, and seeing things and doing things in relationship to them, then Krishna very happily appears within our memory, because we're actually thinking about him to serve him. Just like Gajendra, he had a very serious foot problem in the water for a long time. There was no Ayurvedic doctor around to help him. Therefore, he had no alternative but to pray to the Supreme. So he was very sincere. He really wanted the Supreme to come and help him, although he didn't know who the Supreme was. So because of his sincerity and his situation, Krishna actually came as Vishnu and saved Gajendra, because he had no other desire than to be saved by the Supreme. Similarly, we have so much information about Krishna, but we're not necessarily that serious about utilizing it properly. Sometimes we have to be put into situations where we have no choice but to rely upon Krishna. For instance, this is a marathon in many parts of the world for book distribution. Srila Prabhupada Marathon is started or is coming up. Now we may go on the street and try to distribute a book, but obviously we're meeting people sometimes who don't have any interest in Krishna consciousness. we haven't met them, they don't know us. We're meeting complete strangers with unknown karma, unknown interests, and we're trying to distribute to them a book. So how is that possible? It's only possible if we rely upon Krishna. If we don't rely upon Krishna, if we don't really believe that Krishna can help me, or if I think, well, I don't really need Krishna, I'm expert at distributing books. I've learned so much about distributing books, I'm expert. It's certainly everyone was going to surrender to me because of my prowess. One may find himself on the street trying to distribute a book and only getting critical comments from the people who are coming by. Why don't you get a job? Shave your head. Get a haircut, usually they say. If you have a shaven head, they say, why don't you get a haircut? Because Krishna was training us up. Trinadapi Sunichena. If we don't rely upon him, if we rely upon our false ego and think I have so much prowess, so much ability, and don't understand that only with the mercy of the super soul can we connect with anyone, what to speak of complete strangers, trying to sell them a book on what they may think is Indian philosophy. Most people haven't gone on the street looking for books of Indian philosophy. And yet, with the mercy of the super soul, with the mercy of our relying upon the super soul, Krishna, he can send us to people who have, due to their past activities, due to their piety, has some desire to understand reality. They may not know who God is. They may not know what the purpose, how to achieve the purpose of life. But Krishna sent them because they have some interest, a little interest, in trying to find out how to end their suffering, at least. What is the higher reality? And when they see a happy devotee, and when they see when Krishna empowers a devotee to say the right thing at the right time, with the right spiritual potency, then they become interested and they take the book. Not because of our overwhelming power, but because we've surrendered to Krishna enough, so Krishna empowers us, so that Krishna sends the right person to take the book and give some donation for it. So the practical thing is that if we act in goodness and do devotional service, give up the idea that we're the proprietor and that we're doing it for our own personal enjoyment, still, we have to understand we're instruments. Otherwise, there are many devotees who have participated in the Hare Krishna movement for some years, and because they began to imagine themselves to be independent doers rather than being instruments for Krishna, they thought they had become powerful. As I said, one time I was distributing books in the airport in Charlotte, North Carolina, very small airport in America. And it was at that time, book distribution in the Hare Krishna movement was very prominent. It was actually a prestigious service, and everyone was trying to distribute more books than anyone else. So at that time, one had to distribute a good number of books to wind up in the first 20 book distributors in the world. So at that time, it was a small airport. It took a lot of effort, but we spent a lot of time. We're distributing books at least 8 hours a day. And I was doing fairly well in terms of the world. I was in the top 20 usually. But the devotee I was distributing books with, he was usually number 3 or 2, sometimes 1. And how did he do it? I used to watch him. So he was a good-looking devotee, but he'd only stop the most beautiful women who passed by in the airport, who had most elegantly dressed. And when he stopped them, you'd think that Romeo had finally met Juliet and that there was a romance going on. And then usually after some interchange between them, Juliet would give Romeo a nice donation and take a book. So this went on for some months. Actually, we were together in the airport, living together, just him and myself. And then one day he finally met the Romeo, the Juliet he was looking for. And that was his permanent Leela, and he disappeared from not only being one of the top distributors in the world, he disappeared from the Hare Krishna movement. So Krishna is very kind. He'll engage our motivations also, up to a point, until we finally get what we're looking for. And then we don't need Krishna anymore. Or as Srila Prabhupada one time, he was walking up New Vrindavan hill with Bhavananda Prabhu. So New Vrindavan, if anyone has ever been there, is very, very hilly. It takes a long time just to walk up a hill. So Bhavananda Prabhu was helping Srila Prabhupada up the hill, and they were visiting when Srila Prabhupada was visiting. And finally, when Srila Prabhupada got off the hill, he threw Bhavananda's hand away and said, "Get away, I don't need you anymore." So Bhavananda Prabhu was very shocked. And Prabhupada said, "Yes, this is like the impersonalists. They say, yes, I take shelter of Krishna, I take shelter of Krishna. And finally, when they become liberated, they say, now I become God, I don't need Krishna anymore." They just throw him away. So we should understand, even from the beginning, that we're instruments for Krishna. Not only we're not the controller, not only we're not here to enjoy material energy, being empowered by Krishna, but we're also simply instruments. We're not here to become the saviors. We're here to save others by being saved ourselves. Then, when we're actually apart from material desires, material motivations, material conceptions, then we can continue on and continue following the example of other personalities who are completely absorbed in simply trying to please Krishna. As here in the material world, we have the desire to please our material senses, our material minds, our conceptions of life, and ultimately our false ego. So when one is outside that realm, one still remains a servant, but one becomes a servant of Krishna and his devotees. But that service is all blissful because it's based on love, on actual pure love. So when we come to that realm, then we become aware of who we actually are, and we become attracted to some resident of Vrindavan who's eternally engaged in Krishna's service, and we follow their example and their instructions, and gradually that awakens within ourselves or amplifies ourselves that desire to please Krishna in a similar way. So we can come to that platform. We may not be on that platform completely now, but if we follow the instructions and we have a regular program of hearing about Krishna, so that we clarify our position as being servants of Krishna. We clarify our position that we're here to please Krishna. And we clarify our position that my highest position in the material world is to become an instrument for Krishna and his representatives. then the result is that one day, as we become liberated, then we'll become aware of Krishna and his associates and their different moods. And that will awaken within ourselves a similar mood to one of the associates, because that's who we are. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhu Kavanoi Shravanadi Shudachite Korya Udoy. That we're all Nitya Siddhas. We're all eternally perfect. What makes us imperfect is the fact that we don't act according to our real spiritual nature. We're running after material things. We're already perfect, but we think we're imperfect, and that only by adding material things to our lives can we become perfect. But we're all Nitya Siddhas. We're not part of the material energy. We're all spiritual energy. We're conscious energy. We're not the unconscious energy we're associating with now. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhu Kavanoi Shravanadi. But by simply hearing about Krishna and accepting what we're hearing and applying it within our lives, desiring simply to do that, Shravanadi Shudachite, then our consciousness will become purified and love for Krishna will be arisen within our heart. We don't have to do anything else but hear, chant, and apply within our lives to the best of our ability. And then Krishna will help us because he's there as a super soul and he knows our sincerity. So in spite of whatever tribulations we may have to go through in the material world, if they help us take shelter of Krishna, then our lives will become perfect. So Srila Rupa Goswami says that this verse, which we can read over and over again, is the very essence of all instructions. Therefore, it's a very important verse to read and to try to apply to the best of our ability. And then gradually, Krishna will reveal himself to us and we'll become happy and we'll understand that there's nothing more valuable than this instruction of Srila Rupa Goswami. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions or comments? So what have we understood from this verse? And would like to make a comment on the verse? Not to leave. Tell you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, to accept my humble obeisance and all glories to Srila Prabhupada. I actually have a little question, if that's okay. I couldn't find the emoji with the reason.
Okay.
So when you talked about the taking instructions and following the presidents of Vrindavan, I was wondering if they should be like ISKCON devotees, or do you mean the Vaishnavas there in general?
Well, probably the safest thing we can do is that we should recognize that Srila Prabhupada was a very unique personality, a very unique Vaishnava. The fact that he did something that none of the other Vaishnavas have ever done by spreading Krishna consciousness all around the world. And he did it because of his taking shelter of his spiritual master in disciple succession. Therefore, the safest thing is to judge all instructions in relationship to Srila Prabhupada's example and his instructions. They're the clearest connection that we can have to the disciple succession, to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, and to our other Vaishnavas in disciple succession, ultimately to the mission of Srila Rupa Goswami, and to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the Panchatattva. And through them, we can actually enter into Vrindavan. Koranga Balite Habe Balaka Sharir Hari Hari Bolite Naine Babe Nira. That when will there be a shivering in the body by chanting the name of Gauranga? And that when we chant Hari Hari, that there'll be tears flowing from my eyes. When will Lord Nityananda show me his mercy, and that all material desires will seem insignificant, when will I follow in the footsteps of the six Goswamis and be able to understand the conjugal pastimes of Radha and Krishna? And when will I take shelter of these six Goswamis and attain perfection in my life? So our clearest connection is with Srila Prabhupada, connecting us through this succession, through the actual instructions, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to distribute Krishna consciousness everywhere to whoever we meet. And Prabhupada did that all around the world. No one has shown such potency and such surrender to the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and our disciple succession than Srila Prabhupada. Therefore, we have to judge everyone's instructions accordingly, whether they're within our society or outside our society. But if we take instructions from Vaishnavas who don't recognize Srila Prabhupada's greatness, it's very unlikely that they can really help us very much. It is not that we're sectarian, but we're realists, that's all. That there is a reality that Srila Prabhupada has brought to the entire world and that we've connected ourselves to. And others can also connect themselves to it. But if they don't recognize Srila Prabhupada, then we have to be a little cautious, especially in associating with them, because there's something lacking or some misunderstanding there. But on the other hand, we can take good advice from many people. When Srila Prabhupada was distributing back to Godhead, one officer in the Indian Army mentioned to him that it might be a good idea to print hardcover books, because then people would take it more seriously. So Prabhupada took that as the direction coming from Krishna, and he started to translate the Srimad Bhagavatam. So if we can listen to instructions coming from others and see whether or not it's applicable to our service, to our acharyas and disciple succession or not. Thank you for the question. Any other questions? Comments? Who would like to say something what they've understood from the class? Agnihotra Prabhu.
Да, Марта Желанговата переведете? Да. Ну, я два момента из лекции вынес, те, которые больше запомнились. Первый – это пример с санкиртанчиками Санкирданой, что количество не всегда важно, важно качество и настроение, в котором мы проповедуем и распространяем сознание Кришны.
Okay, so Maharaj Agnihotra Prabhu has understood two main points that he can use. First of all, from that example with the Sankirtana devotee that you have mentioned, he understood that it's the quantity is not as important as the quality of our preaching and the motivation and the mood with which we're preaching is more important than the quantity of book distribution. And there is a second point, okay?
И второе – это благодарность духовному учителю и преданным, которые помогают нам расти на пути преданного служения. На примере горы в Нью-Вриндаване, когда Шрила Прабхупада шел Бхавананда Прабху, и когда Бхавананда Прабху его вытащил на гору, тот его пнул и сказал: «Все, дальше я сам, ты мне не нужен».
And the example that you mentioned about Bhavananda Prabhu and Srila Prabhupada, Prabhu is saying that how important this is in our life to be grateful to the spiritual master and to the devotees who is helping us in our journey in Krishna consciousness.
Yes, very good. Anyone else would like to share something? Ananda Devi Dasi, would you like to share something?
Sure. Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you so much for your wonderful class. I definitely appreciated the the points that you made about performing service and not expecting a reward in return, that we should do things with care and attention to please Krishna and his representatives. Then we will become happy because they are happy with us.
Good, thank you. See, who else would like to share something? Let's see. Dave, would you like to share something?
Vamananda Prabhu, microphone. Please turn on your microphone.
Сейчас?
Да.
Я хочу сказать, что я понял, что ум помогает, если помогает и дает нас возможность связаться для такая высшая реальность. Если мы думаем о Кришне все время.
Okay. Devendra
Prabhu said that a very interesting point is that, Prabhu, could you please turn off your microphone? Микрофон выключите, пожалуйста, свой сейчас, иначе меня будет слышно. Харе Кришна? Okay. Vamananda Prabhu, please turn off your microphone. Микрофон выключите свой, пожалуйста.
Okay.
So Prabhu said that, no, I still can hear myself. Vamananda Prabhu, выключите, пожалуйста, свой микрофон. Okay. So Prabhu said that a very interesting thing he could understand is that the mind is actually a tool to connect us to the reality if the mind follows the instructions. He never thought of the mind as something that can be of a value, such as connection with the reality.
Хорошо. Okay, anyone else would like to share something? Okay, Nitya Tripta Devi Dasi.
Харе Кришна, Гуру Махарадж, примите мои поклоны. Я вот для себя отметила такой момент. Памятование о Кришне является общением с Ним. То есть в любой момент, когда мы о Нем вспоминаем, в течение дня, Кришна выходит с нами на связь. Получается так, да? Это очень вдохновляет. Благодарю.
Mataji says that she is very inspired by the fact that you said that Krishna's name, when we chant Krishna's name, it's the same as to have a direct communication with him, to be in association with him. And she said that means that the inspiration is that during the day, whenever she chants his name, that means he is already there, and she's feeling that she has the direct access, or she's always in association with him.
Pravila. Хорошо. Good. Thank you, Spasiba. And last one is Gyanadas.
Hare Krishna. I understood that to come to the spiritual platform or to learn to chant Hare Krishna without offense requires that we do some service for spreading the Sankirtan movement. And yeah, so this was the service we can engage in and learn to chant Hare Krishna better like this.
Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Pranjaraj Shri Nectar of Devote instruction ki jai. Swami Veda Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Gaur Pramanande Haribol.
Hari
Hare Krishna.
Prahladananda Swami Maharaj ki
Jai.
Hare Krishna.